If you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant. If you're happy doing everything yourself, then that's fine. But if you want to accomplish more than you can do alone, you've got to learn how to delegate. Start with a human assistant with us. That will teach you the principles and skill of how to delegate to machines too, and it'll change your life.
Let's kick off. Welcome to RunRate. Our guest today is Jonathan Swanson, founder of Athena, a company that helps founders and executives scale themselves through elite assistance and systems built for leverage. Full disclosure, I'm a friend of Jonathan for years. I'm also an investor in Athena, big fan of the product and the company. Worth noting, before Athena, Jonathan co-founded Thumbtack, one of the largest services marketplaces in the country, connecting millions of customers with local professionals. Today, we're going to try to jump into all sorts of different topics. We'll definitely go deep on AI. We'll definitely go deep on where AI meets delegation. And we'll just get a little bit of a picture about Jonathan, his background, kind of where he got to where he is today. And so, Jonathan, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Awesome. Excited to be here.
And have you met Hank, a.k.a. Litquidity? Have you two met, or is this first time?
First time. Excited to hang with you, Hank.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm very excited to have the source of Athena itself. Kyle knows firsthand how difficult of a time I have managing, everything that I have going on. I'm always talking about I don't have time, and through what I've heard about what you're doing, you sound like the perfect person to be talking to.
He needs a lot of help, Jonathan. We gotta step in. Look, he needs leverage.
The more your life is a mess, the more I can help you.
So Hank's the meme lord, the king of memes. Jonathan and I have known each other quite a long time. Jonathan married a friend of mine that I used to work with. That's kind of how we met, and I've tracked your story. And Jonathan, excited to deep dive today. The way I was thinking about going about this was thematic, kind of picking general kind of areas of your life, Jonathan, and how that tracked. And then I'll kind of guide the flow. Hank will jump in with some great questions. And so if we take it all the way back,
let's do it.
I know you're from the Midwest originally, and then you ended up in the White House working under the Obama administration. Would love to hear how that tracked. I'm sure that was maybe a childhood dream, but how did you make that happen?
Yeah, some people want to grow up to be, famous or whatever. I wanted to grow up to be the economic advisor to the president. That was my very geeky ambition. I loved economics and politics, and I was very lucky. I got to do it right out of school. I interned at the White House when I was in college, and then joined the West Wing right after college to work for the president's top economic advisor. This is actually Bush, not Obama, even further back. And it was a dream experience as like a kid out of school, because you get to walk in the West Wing, and there's like Condi Rice walking by you. She, just bombed some country or something, and you're just one step up from intern, but you get to be around all these amazingly talented people. And it was definitely transformative experience for me. The people were extremely talented, very patriotic experience, as you might expect. I was there during the financial crisis, so that was interesting, like in the room with Paulson and Bernanke, not making decisions, but I was kind of there to take notes from my boss, and I got to see how these things went down, where they're making decisions for hundreds of $1 billion bailouts and the like. And, I think the most transformative experience for me personally was just seeing how the president operated as the leader of the free world. And as you might expect, his assistants were really freaking good. And they set the bar very high for me for what this assistant kind of principal partnership could look like. And yeah, I saw it was more than just tasks. It wasn't just like scheduling. It was this true counselor and partner. At the end of the day, my boss he'd have a line of senators and people out his office trying to bend his ear, and those people would leave, and then he would sit down lean back in his chair and, sit with his assistant and be like, okay, what happened today? And this was clearly the one person he trusted more in the world because they were in his inbox, knew everything that was going on. And that set me off on a life mission of how could I build a personal team as good as the president's. And
I love
that's
that.
kind of defined.
Does he have just
what
one
I've been working on.
like main assistant, or are there like assistants to the assistants? I'm not as familiar, how staffing works in the White House, but just curious.
And did Trump change it up, Jonathan?
Yeah,
you'll know more about this, but Trump, I believe, was the first one that didn't want a chief of staff as like a gatekeeper. So he kind of blew out that role and decided he wanted to be more direct. Like, how do you look at the overall hierarchy of how the flow of information happens?
Yeah, I mean, under Bush and most presidents, there's a chief of staff who controls the flow of information. The chief of staff is typically, one of the most powerful people in the world and the best informed person in the world. Like the whole apparatus of the security state, of military, of all the government feeds into this one human. And then they triage what information gets to the president. And their goal is to share information that helps the president make the best decision and nothing else. Because if you overload the president with unnecessary stuff, it's just like the cognitive load is too high. And so their goal is to filter it, bring, one of the jobs in the economic team that I worked on is when you bring a decision to the president, the goal is to synthesize the core issues as succinctly as possible and bring the strongest and opposing opinions to the table so the president can see all of them. And so you spend weeks preparing these arguments so both sides of an argument are satisfied that their case has been made fully. So when the president sits down, he sees both sides fully presented and then makes the best decision he can. On the tactical side, the president had 3 assistants right outside the Oval Office, focused on different things, scheduling, etc., and then 1 body man who just travels with him everywhere. And the body man job is maybe one of the dopest jobs in the world.
Yeah, I'm the president body man.
On Air Force One.
Yeah.
You go everywhere, literally everywhere he goes, you put the speech down, you're working 18 hours a day, you're working with the chief of staff. And you don't have to make any of the hard decisions, but you get to be there for all the action.
Are you known as the body man? Is that the title?
No, I was not the body man. I was the geek manning the Bloomberg terminal. There's one Bloomberg terminal in the West Wing, and I was the guy who knew how to use it. So that was my claim to fame.
It is a fascinating template for you to learn from and ultimately deploy against Athena. Sorry, Hank, anything else on this before we move on?
No, I just I would have assumed there's more Bloomberg terminals, but that's crazy.
There's a lot in the Treasury building, but the West Wing is pretty small. If you should take a tour sometime. I think it's like 100 people in the West Wing, and then there's thousands of people in the buildings nearby.
Now that Lutnick and Bessent are there's like 40. Hanks, you'd be more impressed today.
I bet there's a lot. The personal experience of the White House are some of the funnest things. It's just like, I didn't get to do this all the time, but you get to if you travel with the president, you're like flying in a helicopter behind him. And Marine One is Air Force One, the helicopter, and they have other helicopters around it. And you're the decoy helicopter in case it gets shot down. And then you land in a field somewhere to go to an event. And it's like the world has just parted. There's like military there saluting the president. And then you get in the staff van behind the president's limo, which is not really a limo. It's really a tank. And it's disguised as a limo. And you're driving through highways and cities and the world just parts. And I'm one step up from an intern, but I could taste what the power must have felt like, because that is just an insane experience for any human to experience.
I love that. Yeah, we've talked a little bit about it. I grew up in a small town, and then I worked for a crazy, incredible investor billionaire for a bunch of years, and kind of had my mind blown with some of those experiences of the parting of the waters. Less dramatic than the POTUS, but equally mind-blowing at the time for me. And so, Jonathan, so great, obviously incredible childhood dream manifested to get you to the White House. You then moved on, and I think about the time we met, you had founded or had started to scale Thumbtack. And, I remember at the time, true breakout story. Prior to Thumbtack, there's a handful of sleepier companies in that space that had existed. Walk us through a little bit of how that got started, because you had this idea for the assistant and what you could do with that via Athena, but then you had a pit stop in the middle with Thumbtack, and then you eventually got to it. So I would love to hear how that happened.
The genesis of Thumbtack was Amazon. We were brainstorming startups when I was still at the White House, and I got together with my co-founders every Sunday, and we just brainstormed ideas. And the question we asked ourselves was, what are problems that affect 1 billion plus people? And if we can solve a problem that affects lots of people, maybe it's a big company. And we kept coming back to Amazon being a great company, but just doing products, and no one was doing Amazon for services. And the more we dug into the problem, the more it just started slapping us in the face. It's like you're walking down the street and you see a literal piece of paper taped to a light pole that's like a handyman, and you pull off their phone number. You're like, this does not seem like the future of how we're going to hire people. And I mean, you still see this when you walk around cities. I will I'll snap photos of it and send it to my co-founders and be like, our job is not done. But yeah, that was just a very high level insight that it seemed like there would be an Amazon for local services, and we had no idea what the hell we were doing. But we moved to San Francisco and got a house and started working out of this house. I lived in a closet for the first couple of years, very meager beginnings. And I joked I came out of the closet every morning to go to work. And yeah, it wasn't an overnight success by any means. The first few years, I'd say, were very difficult, and we were figuring out how do you acquire the professionals, the clients, how do you monetize. And there was lots of up and down for a few years. Eventually, we got the right business model, figured out how to scale both supply and demand, and then we were off to the races. But yeah, it was a harder business, I think, than we realized. I think this is standard founder story is you think it's going to be easier than it is. But if you think of Thumbtack, we have 1,000 categories of service, handyman, to wedding photographer, and then hundreds of cities. Mm-hmm. Every permutation is actually a distinct marketplace. And so it's not really one marketplace, it's hundreds of thousands of marketplaces, and you have to have liquidity in each one. If you have, lots of handyman in Denver, it doesn't mean you have lots of house cleaners in Topeka. And so solving all of that took us a long time. But yeah, we've been fortunate to make it pretty far. And now the company, does near $500 million of revenue, very profitable, growing nicely. And there's some exciting AI tailwinds in the business as well. But yeah, it was certainly not guaranteed from the beginning. There were many years where I wasn't sure if we'd make it.
What would you say is like the most relevant thing that you learned as a first-time founder through Thumbtack that now has helped guide you into what you're doing now with Athena? Since it sounds like the first time you were moving out to San Francisco, going through fundraising, all that stuff. I mean, I assume the first time's the hardest, and then it has to get a little easier, but definitely not, a walk in the park.
He's shaking his head. Like, I'm not sure it gets easier.
Yeah. I mean, well, I just think, we were just such idiots. We had no idea what we were doing.
It's where it starts. You got to not understand the challenge to jump in both feet. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, if you know the challenge, you might not do it is the thing. It's like, we didn't know how to fundraise. We didn't know how to build a team. I mean, we didn't even know what the roles in a company were, but that's the beauty of startups. You just jump in and you get to figure it out. So doing things a second time, lots of it's way easier. So like the first time hiring a CFO, I asked my investors, tell me what a CFO does, introduce me to a few, let me learn from the best, and then I'll go hire one. And I probably interviewed like 50 CFOs the first time I hired one at Thumbtack. Now at Athena, if I meet the right person on the second interview, I fucking hire them because I know what I'm looking for and I don't have to relearn that. So that is certainly way easier. The existential challenges and the the drama that comes from large groups of people always remains. There's going to be people who are unhappy, people who you hire who don't work out, projects that you expect to work that don't. So I think the biggest lesson from Thumbtack is like, if you have the right idea, it's really just about staying in the game long enough to make it work. And with Thumbtack, we had the right idea, and there was years where it wasn't clearly working, but we stayed in the game, and eventually you unlock the growth or the monetization or whatever you need. So that's I think a lesson I'll always carry with me. And then there's certainly just like tactical stuff. Like at Thumbtack, I had my first assistant. At the White House, I was basically the assistant to the chief economic advisor. And at Thumbtack, I hired my first assistant in the Philippines named Marnie. And she started doing the normal stuff, helping with calendar, inbox. And as the business scaled, I had her take on more and more. And she helped me scale myself as I'm scaling the business, and went from the tactical stuff that an assistant does to helping me recruit executives, helping me be a better boss. I even had her help me make friends. When we were leaving the house, I told Marnie, I was like, I don't really have any friends outside of this house where I work. Help me make some friends. And so she planned dinner parties at a new apartment I got, and that's where I made all my best friends. And she just helped me invite founders that I'd never met, invite Uber founders, Airbnb founders. Lots of these people went on to do cool things. And that's where I met Catherine, who Kyle I knew before me. And Catherine became my friend through this dinner party. And then, a year later, Marnie was helping plan our engagement trip. And then she was planning our wedding. And now Marnie helps us with our kids. And that kind of trajectory of the last decade shows how important Marnie has been to me. And that was, it's transformative. I
see what happens
accomplish what I did at Thumbtack.
When you allow executives to executive assistants to join your life. Hank, this is like, look what happened to Jonathan.
I've always shied away from that. People are saying you need an assistant, and I think about, hey, I'm doing it fast, and I could probably do it better than delegating out to people so far, or from the get-go. But I am at the point now where this entire thing resonates with me, and beyond what they can do with the tasks, I'd love to learn a lot more about that. But I guess how'd you start off with how'd you start off with finding Marnie to begin with? At what point did you decide, hey, I've never had an assistant, I need one now? And
it's a good topic. I just decided to take the plunge with Jonathan, with Athena. I've never had an EA. I don't really like someone else controlling my calendar. I like to be in the flow of it, but I finally got to the point where it was just too much and needed to unlock some leverage.
So let me answer your tactical question, but first, Hank, you said something that is really on point. You said, I think it'll be faster or better to do myself. And so I haven't done it. Actually, that's I call this the cardinal sin of delegation, thinking it'll be faster or better to do yourself. And it's the cardinal sin because it's true. It is faster and better to do yourself the first time. Handing off a task to someone else takes more time. It's like venture. There's a J curve. You're gonna go negative at first. You're gonna spend more time. They're not gonna do it the way you want the first time. You have to give them the feedback, and that J curve is why lots of people never get leverage. But on the other side of the J curve is you have something that compounds forever, like venture, and the assistant partnership compounds forever, and that's why you want to invest long term and get through the J curve, and then you get to this compounding, where eventually the system becomes like a cognitive prosthetic. They know you as well or better than you know yourself. They've absorbed all of your thinking, your preferences, and then they can act on your behalf. And, eventually they can get to a point where they can do tasks, complete them, and the first you hear about the task is when it's completed. You haven't even delegated. That's kind of the nirvana of delegation. No one starts there. You start very basic, but that's where you ultimately want to get. And on your tactical question, of how did I hire Marnie? This was over a decade ago. I just looked on Upwork and interviewed, 30 people and gave them a bunch of practice tests, and then picked the one that was the best and started working with Marnie. And I tell people if they can't, if you can't afford Athena's $3,000 a month, you go hire someone yourself and you can get a lower cost option. It's a lot more work up front, a lot more training, a lot more vetting, but what you need to do is vet a lot. And I think that's where most people fail when they get started is if you interview 10 assistants, you're not going to get a good assistant. We vet 30 to 50,000 a month. And so for each client, we're vetting a few hundred assistants, and the median assistant is mediocre, and you really want that top 1%. And so you need to vet a huge amount, give them real practice tasks that are relevant to the work you're doing. And then, you find someone who can actually get the task done that you care about. So yeah, and then once I started with Marnie, I just started the kind of obvious stuff. Can you help with my calendar? Can you help me book this trip? Can you help draft emails for me? Mm-hmm. And then the thing that distinguishes the best delegators, a number of things. One is willingness to give up control, because you have to. Willingness to experiment and iterate and give feedback. Those three things, if you're willing to experiment, iterate, and give feedback, that's how you get really good. And so, every week I would just give a new project to Martin and be like, hey, can you try finding a gift for a friend? Comes back, not worth it. Didn't work. Okay, let me give you some feedback, or let's try this again, or let's try a new project. Next task, can you help me get a passport renewal, whatever. And as long as you have this kind of tolerance for experimentation and iteration, then you just accumulate. And anytime something sticks, you keep it as an ongoing task that you do forever. And if something doesn't, you iterate or you give up on it and you go on to the next. And you just layer on more things until eventually assistant's doing so much that they're at full capacity, and then you get your second assistant, and then your third, and then you have so many assistants that they're coming to you for feedback on their tasks so much that it's actually another job, and you need to put a chief of staff on top of those assistants to review all their work. And so, the amount of leverage you can get is infinite, but you've got to start with one, and then you can keep going for as long as you want. I've worked with, I've known a venture or a hedge fund billionaire who had a personal team of 50.
Oh.
And I spent time with a woman who managed his EAs. He had 8 EAs. They all went
50?
to Princeton.
50?
50, a personal team of 50.
Okay.
He had 8 assistants. The assistants he only hired from Princeton. And I asked this person, how do you decide how to optimize projects for this big team? And she's like, if I can save my principal, if my team can spend a day to save my principal a minute tomorrow, it is well worth their time. And now this is a totally next level.
That's when you've made it. That's next level
status. But I do think that is the world we're all moving towards over time with solutions like Athena and agents. This is the cost of this kind of support is going to deflate. And that's only available to billionaires today, but it's going to be more mass market in the decade ahead. And, I always imagined that I would eventually have a team of 50, but now I think it's going to be, a team of 5 or 10 with 1,000 agents.
Yes.
And that combination
I love that leverage.
Is going to be extremely powerful.
How sad does it make you when you meet someone that has 0 EAs in your heart? Does it just crush you?
I mean, I like to joke that it's just unethical. You have skills that you uniquely can do, and you're deciding to take on scheduling and denying the world the skills and the talent you have by doing admin. And the flip side is you're also denying someone a talented person a good job. And so there are people who kind of feel guilt about having an assistant. And, I grew up in the Midwest, in farm country, and we didn't have assistants or service around our house. So I understand how this can sound. But, the flip side is if you're delegating to another human, you're giving a good job to someone who cares about it. And that's a cool gift to someone. So you get more leverage, success, time, and someone else gets a good job. And so
100%.
It's a beautiful trade.
No, I think from my background as well, it's a humble, middle class upbringing in Miami, and I sort of, view that of like getting assistance to, in like Latin America, right? Everyone has like a worker, an employee or something, when they're well to do. And I just shied away from that. But I think, what you're saying resonates, in also giving people, an opportunity to do things rather than hoarding everything, saying I could do this, and not sharing, and compounding, in a shared kind of mission. Even from like my business side of things, that's one thing that I'm trying to work on this year, but also personally, like whipping out my credit card to like make a purchase online or book a flight or things like that that I think could be delegated away. And so that's one thing I'd love to sort of talk a little bit more about, in the sense of like, you know how you kind of like get someone who's never had an assistant to sort of warm up to it, and um like how Athena helps find the right person for someone like me.
Yeah, the first thing I would say is everyone delegates. It's people just do it at different degrees of skill. Couples delegate to each other, families delegate within the family, companies delegate. I mean,
Right.
Hunter gatherers. It's delegation is literally in the name of hunter gatherers, and so the question is not whether you're going to delegate. It's just like how skillfully you're going to do it and how much you'll invest at becoming really good at it. Um, and in terms of how to get started, what I tell people is make a list of what your goals are for the month or quarter ahead, personal and professional. You want to hit revenue goals. You want to hire people. You want to spend more time with your wife. You want to do whatever it is. Give me those goals, and then I'll break it down into ways an assistant could help. And if you're trying to fundraise for your company, sure, your assistant's not going to run your fundraise, but could they help with it? Absolutely. Can they help you get introductions? Can they mind your contacts? So I think first is just you should think about your goals, and then you insert your assistant into those goals, because that's how you make them the highest leverage. The other way is to kind of keep a list by your computer where you just list two things. One, things you don't like doing. So putting your credit card into the internet. Don't ever do that. Sure, it only takes a few minutes, but I haven't put my credit card in the internet, for a decade. And so there's been thousands of times I haven't had to do that. And those things accumulate. There's also like RSVPing for a party. Sure, I could do that. That would take 4 clicks, but like I haven't done it for a decade, and that saves me time. Or, waiting on hold to talk to customer support. You don't have to do that. Your assistant can wait on hold, and they can patch you in when you get to the front of the line. So one is just kind of like, what are things you don't like doing that drain you, that you can take off? And they may seem small, but you start accumulating those, and it takes off this kind of cognitive load and frees your mind to tackle other things. And then the other list is, what are the things you want to do that you don't have enough time for, that you wish you had more time for? And so I would start with the pain list, because pain is often more motivating, and removing the kind of minutia and the pain then lets you start to dream bigger and go after your goals. And one of the counterintuitive things we've learned from working with thousands of clients, and we kind of see who's really good and who's mediocre delegators, the top 1% delegators, it's very clear that as leverage increases, ambition increases. And people think it's the opposite. People think, oh, it's super ambitious people have the ambition to create these personal teams, and then that allows them to do great things. But the reverse is actually more true in our experience, because when you're so weighed down by putting your credit card in the internet, filling out a DMV form, it's just hard to be ambitious, because you just got this like reigning annoyance.
You don't even have time to think of like the larger, like, visionary things when you're bogged down with the menial tasks.
Exactly. So you take those things off, and then your brain doesn't say, hey, how can I do more menial tasks? Your brain says, oh, wow, how could I start a new business? How could I go bigger in my current business? How could I, give a really thoughtful gift to my wife or my parent that I would never have the time to do otherwise, but will be like the most meaningful gift they've ever gotten? And that is a luxury of time. And I think most people have time scarcity. They live in time scarcity. They just assume they will always be in a time scarce world. But with enough delegation, you can get to a world of more time abundance. And with abundance, you do all sorts of cool things.
But I want to understand also, as that transitions to a more agentic kind of AI environment, which we're quickly headed towards, how that evolves.
Yeah, so I think the most foundational level is, do you want to accomplish or do more than you can do alone? That's the fundamental question. If the answer to that is no, I want to only do what I can do, then delegation is not for you. But if you want to do more than you can do alone, then the only way to do it is delegation to machines and to humans. Okay, so if you've kind of gotten over that first step, then the first step is to work with an assistant that can take off the most high frequency things that drain your energy and drain your time. And so it doesn't start with super complex rocket science. It's someone helping schedule your meetings, book your flights, buy things for you online, coordinate with your tax attorney, do the things that aren't the most strategic use of your time, but take up lots of it.
What's the right way to think about fit when you're getting that first? Like Athena is a specific thing where you've done the vetting. You have those 50,000 kind of applicants a month. You're getting the top 1%. So conceivably, you're getting a great candidate. How certain do you need to be, or how much do you need to think about that fit up front versus just iterating and figuring it out over time?
So there's obviously some base level of capability and competence, and are you feel comfortable with the person? But the most important thing is just the compounding. And the biggest mistake people make is they, have a new assistant every 6 months or every couple of years. And that's the worst thing possible. That's like, Warren Buffett selling everything after 5 years of Berkshire Hathaway. It's just like a disgrace of lack of compounding. So you want to go go the distance, and you want to invest a lot. And so that means in a minimum, you should meet once a week with your assistant. And the best people at first are meeting every day, and, start and end the day together and say, hey, here's what I'm tackling today. Here's something you could help me with. And then, you go through all the things on your lists. And then the next step is, hey, why don't you start looking for ways to proactively take things off my plate? I want you to start every morning looking at my calendar, looking at my inbox, and just go through there and just come to me and say, hey, what are 3 things you might be able to help me with? And I'll tell you, oh yeah, I would like help with that one, or I'll do that one myself. And that's a meta delegation, because instead of delegating once, you're delegating to your assistant to delegate back to you. And I think that is the key unlock that the best delegators learn, is that delegation is not a singular event. It's creating a system that co-evolves over time. And so you start with one simple delegation, then you tell your assistant to be proactive and give you ideas. And there's kind of this going back and forth and evolving together of the things that they can do. And it can sound intimidating, because like at the end state, this is quite powerful, but the beginning state, it's simple. You meet with your assistant, you give them things, you give them feedback. And then you ask them to start taking things off your plate proactively, and you just keep compounding it. And I think probably 99% of people, the biggest barriers, they don't get started. They think it's faster or better to do themselves. It's true. It is that first time. And then of the people that get started, 99% don't give enough feedback to their assistant.
That J curve that we've talked about, you got to give the feedback, you got to get through it. I think interestingly, in the world that we're entering or have entered with AI and agentic, prompting becomes the most important thing. And you can't really prompt unless you understand yourself, understand your schedule, understand your life. And so in a way, getting yourself prepared and having the agent, in this case, the EA, immersed and structured is literally ground zero to have any success.
The personal assistants it's a Swiss Army knife of leverage and or personal productivity. And personal assistants are the highest leverage way to take advantage of AI because in many senses, they are the same technology. Prompting is delegation. If you are a world-class delegator, you're going to be good at prompting. And if you don't know how to delegate, you're not going to be good at prompting. Your executive assistant is literally an agent. Karpathy, OpenAI co-founder, worked at Tesla on self-driving. He calls, LLMs this kind of like human ghost. We've created this synthesis of all of humanity. And so, yeah, an agent and executive assistant are similar. And then the biggest challenge clients face when onboarding an assistant is context engineering. It's how do you take all of the context and information from your brain and export it to your human assistant. And if you get good at delegating, you're going to get good at using agents. If you get good at context engineering
100%.
your assistant, you'll understand the principle of agents. And one of the things we talk about at Athena is we call algorithmic delegation, where when you delegate, you don't want to just say, hey, can you plan this trip for me or plan this dinner party? You want to say, hey, can you plan a dinner party for me? Here's my algorithm for how I plan a dinner party. I like to have people who've raised more than 50 million of capital and different, size businesses and different industries. And I want new people every time. And I look for this information on Crunchbase, and it's literally an algorithm. And I think what people don't realize is the algorithm in your head is so sophisticated and you take it for granted because it's inside your head. But your job as a delegator, whether you're delegating to human or machine, is to export that algorithm into the human assistant over time. And that's feedback. And to the agent, it's context engineering. And the better you are at doing that, the better you're going to be at getting leverage, whether it's a human or a machine.
Do you see like a harmonization with like the human assistants and the agents, as in with Athena, for example, you like if say I'm a customer and I have an agent I'm a customer and I have an assistant, will that assistant be the one that interfaces with an AI agent to make their job more efficient, or is it eventually some sort of blend of both, or there's an offering where you can get a human agent or a electronic agent? Just curious how you're seeing that emerge.
That's our vision at Athena. Is the human is the UX. That's who you interact with. Humans are good UX. And behind that human assistant, we build machine agents to make them faster, better, more capable. And, I think most clients want to leverage AI and want to get massive productivity, but most clients don't want to set up an agent to manage the edge cases, to garden it and kind of optimize it, to deal with the security issues. They just want it to work. And a human assistant is one of the best people placed to actually set up, manage, run those agents for you. If you're in a huge corporation, you might have a whole team dedicated to agents, but for most individuals or startup founders, that's not the case. And the person who can best, set up and run these things for you is the person who has access to all your data, understands, can log in on your behalf. So that's where we think this goes. And, the people that I know that are the best at using agents, what you quickly find is it speeds runs the normal human delegation process. Because when you delegate, when you become really skillful at delegation, you eventually realize that the barrier to what you can accomplish is your ability to delegate, because you built a system and people who can get things done. Well, agents they work 24/7, they respond very quickly. And so if you've set up agentic systems, you quickly become the barrier much more quickly than with a human. And that means this skill of learning how to delegation and how to create new kind of layers becomes more important. And so for me, it's like you hire a couple of human assistants, and then eventually you're triaging all this kind of like, hey, can I have approval for this? Or can you look at this? Or can you thumbs up this wire transfer? And so you put a new layer. on top, which might be a chief of staff. In these agentic systems, the same is true. One of our people who is probably living a couple of years in the future at our company, who's built hundreds of agents for himself, he has his human assistant just triaging all these agents, double checking their work, providing the security step, gathering context for them. And that combination of human machine is incredibly powerful. And I think the people who are good at one are just going to be good at the other. And so if you want to get good at agents, I encourage you to try, with a human assistant. And then as you delegate more and more, when you have things that are just very repetitive, then you build some agentic process around it. So as example, one thing I have assistant do is I like to read articles on my Kindle at night. And so if someone sends me like a 20-page, Dario essay on the adolescence of technology, I don't read it at work because I just want to stay focused. And so I'll forward it to my assistant. She'll convert it into a PDF and then email it to my Kindle. I've asked her to do this probably 100 times over the years. And now I'm like, hey, I've asked, now that we're doing this every week and there's agentic systems, let's create a system that can do this. And you can take that off your list. You can manage it because it's going to break or not always work. But then, 90% of the time that you would have been doing this task, you now have more time for other higher leverage things.
This is where I get excited. I think, John, we talked about, it's also sometimes important to have that human EA as accountability. Getting up to go to the different certain things, you feel a different level of accountability with the human versus an agent. That seems more foreign.
You can't really yell at the agent.
Exactly. You don't want to not show up on the human. But the idea of this
also,
scale.
if an agent, spams 10,000 of your contacts, they don't feel any guilt, remorse, and actually they don't even know they've done it because their memory goes blank. And having a human that has a conscience and has some sense of accountability is pretty useful.
So take us through, Jonathan, just quickly, like what's your day, week look like? How many agents, EAs do you now have? Like, what is that looking like today? And then we'll transition to what it's likely to look like in a couple of years when things accelerate on the agentic side. And personal versus business too. I think the thought is the agent, sorry, I keep messing up EA and agent. The EA, the executive assistant, really for most people starts on the business side. It's your schedule, et cetera. But I also know that you utilize on your personal side as well. And so thinking through both personal and business leverage and how that can scale.
Yeah, so the way our vision at Athena is you delegate a task, and today it's primarily done by human with kind of AI, LLM supporting them. But what we're building towards is a system that will take in your task, decompose it into subtasks, and then assign it to human and machine. And so, for example, one of the tasks one of my assistants is doing now is interviewing nannies for us. And so the goal is hire a nanny. If I asked an agent to do that today, could not do it. But if I said, okay, let's break hiring nanny down into 10 component steps. It's draft a job listing, post it on different things, review the results, put them through some sort of screening, and then do a live interview, and then schedule them to come visit in person. There's components of that the agents can do, but not all of them. And so our goal is to decompose, have an agent run a deep research query or find where to post or do as much as it can. And then the human, does the live interview, does the steps that it can't do. And so we're building this kind of like human in the loop. The human is the driver. And just like with Tesla and self-driving, you don't go 0 to 100% in full self-driving. You do corrective steering and auto braking. And the human driving the Tesla is actually feeding data into the machine to make it better over time. And that's a perfect analogy for what we're doing is that the human driver is an assistant. They're doing all these tasks for you. And as the more data they feed into the machine, the better the tasks we'll get. So, I'd say by the end of this year, we want the majority of tasks to be at least augmented by AI. So a task comes in, gets decomposed, and we're running deep research queries or drafts, or suggested next steps, or best practices related to this task. That's kind of the augmentation, and I think that will happen quickly. And then the full execution depends on the nature of the task. There's going to be things like sending a bank wire that you're not going to have an agent do for a while, and then things that are lower cost of failure, like booking a hotel reservation or something, where having an agent go click some buttons for you might make sense to do pretty quickly. So that's the high level arc of it. And the goal is it's delegation all the way down. You delegate to a human assistant, and the human assistant will delegate to a machine, and that allows the human to take on more and more complex things over time, and provide this human layer that you kind of referenced of like accountability. My assistant will check in on my goals, and that's one of the things I used to do with her. I'm not doing now, but it's just like, check in with me every day. Have I exercised? Have I meditated? Have I eaten clean? And I'm just going to reply yes, no to
accountability
each question.
partner.
It takes me 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And then share the results with my wife and our best friends, and we'll compete. ChatGPT actually has this feature. You can have a recurring task, and I set it up in there. And then after the second one, I just ignored it.
That's important. The human accountability is super important. I totally align with you on that.
Yeah, and so I think the human will lean into the personal touch and the human accountability and the places where humans are best, and the machines will lean into the speed and the drafting and the clicking of buttons where it's going to be best over time.
What about... Go ahead, Hank.
Sorry. Yeah, no, what resonated with me was the analogy to Tesla with their, levels of like autopilot to self-driving supervised where it is now, and then getting to the fully unsupervised driving where the humans will eventually be able to just fall asleep at the wheel, and they'll be from point A to point B. So it sounds like we're kind of in that middle where it's they're able to kind of do things with the human oversight, but we'll eventually get there where they could be fully autonomous.
Yeah, Andrei Karpathy is probably one of the people I trust the most in AI. He, OpenAI co-founder, led self-driving, and he's not fundraising. He's deeply technical, and so he's as bullish as anyone on this technology, but I think it's just kind of grounded. He's not trying to sell something. And he gave a talk at YC where he said, effectively, this is the decade of agents. People say it's the year of agents, but it's the decade. And he gave this analogy of it's going to take time. And he rode in the first Waymo in 2013 in Palo Alto. And it was a 30-minute ride on local streets and highway streets. And he said the ride was perfect. And he got out of the car and he assumed self-driving was imminent. And he's like, it's over a decade later and we're made lots of great progress, but we're still working through the nines of reliability. And I think this is the key thing that's not obvious, is that like automating the first 90% is the easiest. And then it's an order of magnitude more difficult with every 9 in reliability. And so we're going to see, I'm extremely bullish on progress of AI, probably more than most people. And I think these 9s of reliability will take time. And in order to make it through these 9s of reliability, you need the human data to get there. And you're going to a human to be in the loop, to provide security, to do all these things that the models can't do. And so, Waymos actually still have humans in the loop. They're in the cloud now. You may have seen stories. There's actually people in the Philippines who can monitor the cars and help move them if they get stuck. And so, that's not to belittle what they've done. The progress is amazing. And instead of having one human driver, we now have one human driver in the car who is now driving 5 or 10 cars or whatever the ratio may be. And that's the sort of leverage the technology is going to give in the digital assistant space too.
It's like the human behind the 1X robot, actually the one, unloading the dishwasher.
That was so funny because everyone was like panning them and was like kind of like mad. And when I saw that, I was like, that's awesome. Like maybe we should do that at Athena one day where like you get your human assistant and we give you one of those robots, and instead of some random person who you don't know walking around your house,
it's your assistant.
Assistant,
yes,
that you trust, and they can go
That's
Yeah, go get you
fascinating.
something from the kitchen. I mean, it's like technically possible today. I think it's just a little brittle, but yeah, you can, draw the dot lines forward in a couple of years. That's totally doable.
I feel like you're in a great spot, Jonathan, to talk about, the Claude bot. A lot of people are now having fun setting this up, buying a Mac Mini, letting it go nuts. There's obviously some security concerns with that, and there's been some improvements already made pretty quickly on different ways to do it. But that's a little bit of a forward look on where things could go pretty quickly. But there's capability and then there's execution. And I'm 100% aligned with you that things take a lot longer to actually output than one would often think. And so when you see Open Claw, I think it's now called, what's your view, kind of positives, negatives on that unlock?
It's extremely exciting. I would say I know people who have been using systems like OpenClaw for at least a year. OpenClaw, all of the capabilities were there. This person just kind of pulled it together in a way that was more accessible. So, I've a person at Athena who runs basically Cursor plus open code, and has built his own OpenClaw and has been doing it for months. So I think the capabilities are new, but the key unlock is just hard to set up. And this OpenClaw made it more accessible, at least to kind of more technically minded people. And eventually it's going to be more accessible to everyone. And yeah, I think it's extremely exciting and bullish. And it's the premise of our bet, which is there's going to be a certain subset of the world that wants a human as the UX, and then all the capabilities of machine as well. And if you have friends who've set these things up, it takes time to set them up, takes time to monitor them, takes time to optimize. And the security and memory are unsolved pieces today, and humans are good at security and good at memory. And so our goal is to combine the best of both into one seamless product, so you don't have to know how to set this up, you don't have to think about the security. When there's an edge case and it doesn't work, you don't even know, because the task still gets done because the human takes the handoff from the machine and takes it to the finish line.
Yep.
And I think for most people, that's the experience they want. There's always going to be DIY kind of tinkerers who just like building on their own, and I think especially for more technically minded, that's fun and exciting. But your average CEO is like, they just don't have time to set up and mind this. It's just like, hey, the board meeting has to be planned. I don't want it to be 75 or 90% planned. It must be 100%.
Make no mistakes.
That's where the human is good, because the machine can do 75% or 90%, but the human gets to the finish line. And 100% is important for lots of tasks. And so I think it's very bullish for us, as long as we combine it into this human package in a powerful way, and that's what we plan to do.
Yeah, I had not fully appreciated that. It sounds like to reference crypto as a sort of analogy, to where the best user interfaces are the ones where you don't even know that the company itself is built on blockchain rails or something like that, right? It sounds like Athena is taking what's cutting edge from AI, and the LLMs and OpenClaw, all that stuff that's happening, and working through that to create a seamless experience that someone says, hey, I just want to find, assistance that will leverage my time, and, click of a button and make it easy. And then you do all the hard work in the background to make it look pretty simple.
I want to spend more time with my wife. I want to grow my business more. I don't want to optimize the agents.md file in Cursor. I don't even want to know what that is. I think Mark Cuban had a debate or comment about this on the weekend. He was like, he helped out of college help bring software to small businesses, and he's like, hey, I think there's a generational opportunity to bring AI and agents into the 30 million SMBs in America, and these mom and pop shops are not technically savvy. They're good at their craft, but not the technical side, and they need someone to come set it up. And we've been thinking about how that could become Athena over time, where this is not live, but an experiment we're running is like, we would just send an email to 100 of our clients of like, hey, would you like help setting up these first agents in your business? If so, we'll match you with someone who specializes in setting them up, and we'll come in, figure out what are the areas of biggest leverage for you. You can pick a few agents you want set up. We'll deploy them, but we'll deploy them in partnership with your assistant so they know how to maintain, optimize, manage this for you so that it's just ongoing. Otherwise, you hand something off to someone and then it breaks and they're like, I don't know how to use this thing. So that's an experiment we're running now, and we think could be an interesting kind of integration point into small businesses around the world.
And how many executive assistants, Jonathan, do you have deployed today? And is the focus, or has the focus been more on SMB or more on enterprise?
About 3,000 assistants. We started startups just because those are my friends. So all my friends started using me, and then it started going through the startup community. And then last year we started penetrating SMBs, and SMBs are now the majority of new signups. And it's everything from a dental clinic to plumbing store, e-commerce, like the wild world of SMBs. And then enterprise is early for us. We have partnerships with a couple public tech companies you would all recognize. And that's a big long-term opportunity for us. You know, we're talking to one Fortune 50 company next week that has 1,000 assistants. And we would love to do partnerships where we come in, and when those assistants retire or leave, they're replaced by an Athena assistant. And, over the course of a decade, you can kind of take over their whole 1,000-person fleet of assistants. So enterprise is slower, but obviously it's a huge monster business line,
I feel like,
and one that we're excited to get into.
It's so much more than the assistant. It's the training that's required to then ramp that role forward looking, right? So if Athena follows through on its stated goal of having the human EA who builds trust with the executive, and is able to synthesize all the things that are happening in the AI agentic world and be able to make that easy to the end customer, in this case, me, and I'm excited to ramp up. Imagine applying that to 1,000 different roles within an enterprise organization and not having to go through the training at different levels with different people, different capabilities. Like, that unlock is massive.
Yeah, well, there's really training on both sides. Is we want to be the best at recruiting and vetting assistants. It's hard. It's a human business. It's not pure SaaS, and that makes the business complex. But we think we're the best at it. But there's always more room to improve. Step one. Step two is training and getting the foundations in place. And then there's also training the client. It's a place we want to invest more in. And it's, when we first started the business, we're like, we're just going to match you with an assistant and then we're good. And the first 10 clients were like, okay, how do I delegate my inbox? How are other founders doing, this thing? And so we want to get better at sharing those best practices across our clients. And then ultimately, the power of these AI tools is we can surface those best practices in real time. And so, as our systems get more deployed and more powerful, when you delegate a task, there might be, you might be planning a trip to Tokyo, and there might be 5 other assistants planning a trip to Tokyo in the last month. But we don't know that today, and we can connect the dots and share best practices or playbooks, and you don't have to repeat the work. And so there's AI doing more of the work, but then there's also AI coordinating and helping reuse work in more powerful ways. And both of those will be pretty cool.
Sure. And the EA relationship today, it's one-to-one. It's not like 1 to 5 people, but that one-to-one can be for your business goals and also for your personal goals. Yes.
Yeah, we only do one-to-one, and we basically say that you should do work and personal. And the reason we take opinionated stance on both of these is we've never seen someone get real leverage with a part-time assistant. And the reason is because if that assistant's part-time, that means they're probably working with someone else too. That means it's unlikely you're going to compound for a decade, because if
100%.
the assistant's good, someone's going to take them full-time. And so we just say, hey, if you want real leverage, you got to go all in. It's like you can't be married part time, not set up for success. And same on same on the rest. So
question on that then, like, is there turnover, from like the assistant side? Say, they're one-to-one with someone and you want to build with them, but then for some reason they're like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, you have to go find someone else. Do you see like people sticking around for the most part?
So our whole premise of our business is to find people that will work with you for years or a decade plus. And so we built our recruiting, training, and like our compensation around that. That said, this is a voluntary exchange of services, and that person has to want to continue working with you. And so, of course, people sometimes leave. I think the turnover when I hired assistants in San Francisco was like every year. I think that's why I had more expensive in-person assistants in SF for a number of years. But the reason I end up sticking with assistants I now have who are in the Philippines is their longevity was just much better. The best assistants I worked with in SF after a year would say, hey, I want to go work on the HR team or be chief of staff or do something else. And so we specifically hire people who this is the career they want to have. They're not using this as a launching pad. But yeah, of course, people get sick or they have to move or for some reason they have to leave. And when that happens, we help you find someone new. And, it's the promise of the AI systems we're building is that we're going to, over time, help store their preferences and memories in the machine, not just in the human head. And that means if someone is out sick, someone can swap in more easily, or if someone needs to leave, then the next person can ramp more quickly. It's just what I don't know anyone that's hired an assistant who hasn't had to hire another assistant. Just that's part of working, but the goal is to optimize for the long term as much as you can.
I think getting that playbook built and having it. I was listening to Ray Kurzweil on a podcast recently talking about bringing people back in your life from like stories and memories, right? And the more you put out there, the more there is to work with. And I think as that, it sounds like you've spent some time against that, Jonathan, but that's interesting for people to have their own kind of personas, avatars that you could put out. And then also for people that have passed to be able to revisit. Starts with
it's a new
getting
line
the
of
data out of your head.
Reincarnation.
Yes, because you have all the information. So even if God forbid something happens, the EA has to leave.
Yeah,
you've already downloaded and synthesized all that, and you can start from that progress that's been made.
Yeah. And if you want to delegate to agents, then like having that context is extremely important. That's the barrier to like if you. I was just setting up Cursor Pros Open Code on my computer this last week to do some of these automations, and the first thing you realize is you just like bang your head on access because the machine doesn't have access to anything. It's freaking annoying at first to like, okay, I got to create a read-only API for my Gmail because I don't want to give it write access. And so I go do that. And then once you get access, then things start moving. And so if you can, but humans are good at pulling data out in very natural ways of they meet with you and you're like, hey, did you like that gift? Hey, what do you think about that restaurant? And if we can pull that context out so it's not just in the human head, but is also permanently saved in a digital file that you can leverage, then that makes the human assistant better, but also allows us to plug in agents because, these agents are going to get better. And like an agent to click Expedia to book a flight, that's going to be a commodity. But what flight is it booking? Where do you like to fly? Where do you want to sit? How risky will you take a short connection? It doesn't know that. But the more you've exported this data, the better the agent can act on your behalf.
Yeah. Exciting. Well, I think we've spent a ton of time here, Jonathan. Really appreciate it. We like to always wrap up with kind of a speed round, rapid fire. And so I'm going to come at you fast. Do your best to swing and hit. And we'll go down through the list here. Some of it relevant to Athena, some of it a little bit outside the box. But first up, what What's the first thing every founder should delegate?
Whatever is most painful in your life. For most people, it's calendar, inbox, travel, expenses.
Start with the most painful. Okay. One task you would never delegate.
I've told my wife I will never delegate getting her flowers and some kind of personal. I won't
you
delegate
could delegate.
You
maybe you would like to delegate, but
it wouldn't be as romantic.
You've made a commitment.
Yeah, no, there's some personal things where it's actually, by doing it personally, you are showcasing how much you're sacrificing, and that is actually the gift.
Yeah, love that. AI wise, are we in an AI bubble?
No, I think we're just beginning. I'm bullish. 99% of these companies are going to fail, but I've aligned most of my wealth behind inference going to infinity, and
love it.
Valuations are going to go up and down, but inference is going to infinity.
Love it. Bullish as well. Most overrated productivity tool.
Maybe Notion. I mean, it's not that complicated.
Fancy notes.
People love it.
Most underrated productivity habit.
Having your assistant check your inbox and calendar every morning and proactively come to you with 2 or 3 things they might be able to help you with. Do that every day for 1 year, and you're going to say no to most things, but it will compound in an amazing way.
What a dream, Hank. Imagine waking up to that.
I need that. I'm gonna go to bed and sleep on this and think about how to leverage this to the fullest extent.
I mean, even sleep can be delegated. It's like what Brian Johnson's like. Sleep is the foundation of health, and it's true. But like, why are people not sleeping? It's not because they don't want to. It's because they got too much to do.
That's right. That's right. That's the unlock that allows it the time. Thinking through AI, I guess in the context of Athena, but what will AI replace first, and what will AI never replace in that context?
Oh, in the context of Athena, it's clicking buttons. So anytime a task involves searching, clicking buttons, AI is going to start getting good at that. And I think the thing that's last that it's going to replace is human connection and accountability. It's like some of our clients literally work out with their assistant on Zoom. And I think that human accountability and personal relationship is going to be tough to replace for a long time.
Who in your mind is, or if there's multiple, are the best delegators of all time?
Cicero delegated all his letter writing to Tiro. Kant delegated all his scheduling to his assistant. Edison delegated gathering the filament for the light bulb to an assistant. Darwin delegated to an army of fact gathering assistants to write the origin of species. Catherine Great maybe is one of the greatest. She delegated, rewriting legal code. She also is rumored to have had a tester of male capacity who basically was her top of funnel and would go on dates effectively with guys, and she only took the quality bottom of the funnel. I mean, if you look at the greats of human history, they accomplished 10 or 1,000 times more than others, and they were greats at delegation. That was the only way they were able to accomplish so much.
Love that. Last couple here, because I know you've lived in both, experienced both, have to consider all variables here. San Francisco or Puerto Rico for living?
I mean, if you're for living, if you're starting a company for the first time, go to San Francisco. It's the best place to start a business. You fall down, and its talent density is incredible. So every first-time founder, you should be there. If you start a business like myself and you have a network, then you can live lots of other places, and Puerto Rico's pretty darn nice.
On the beach. Not a bad lifestyle. And I guess to wrap it up, what's one thing that you've delegated that most people would consider ridiculous, but you've checked that box where you don't have to look back?
I mean, one of my favorite delegations came from Catherine, my wife. Is we have 4 kids, and as you know, babies and kids don't always sleep through the night. And when we first had them, we had a kind of phone. We would listen to the baby monitor so you could hear them cry and you could go in. And Catherine's like, why are we listening to that? Why don't we delegate that to an assistant in the Philippines? And so we now have 2 nurses who live in the Philippines, and it's daytime for them. And they're working, studying, but they have our baby monitors on. And if the kids need help, they can play a song. If the kids are crying and really need us, they'll call us and we'll go in. But 90% of the time, they can be calmed without us going in. This is Black Diamond delegating.
Hank, that's what elite level delegation looks like. Yeah, Black Diamond.
It's not for everyone, but we've been doing it for years now, and it's freaking the last thing I would turn off because it protects our sleep.
It's clear Hank and I have a lot of work to do on the delegation department. I've just jumped in, so hopefully I'll get there quickly. We'll get Hank there very soon. Well, Jonathan, I have so much respect for you and what you've built across these 2 businesses. Any kind of parting thoughts for folks listening in?
If you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant. And if you're happy doing everything yourself, then that's fine. But if you want to accomplish more than you can do alone, you've got to learn how to delegate and start with a human assistant with us. And that will teach you the principles and skill of how to delegate to machines too. And it's a long-term journey. You got to commit for a decade and it'll change your life.
Jonathan, this was amazing. I'm blown away with the power of delegation, and I look forward to learning more about Athena and really appreciate the conversation.
I love the tie back to the Stoicism. I mean, you got a lot of great historic folks who started with delegation. I wasn't even thinking about it in that frame, but exciting. Jonathan, always great to see you. Thank you so much for spending the time.